All right, we'll say good morning, good morning. Let us begin. Begin by thanking our sponsors for this morning's share. To thank our TALMUD TORAH sponsors for the month of Cheshvan, Yanky and Aliza Statman, and Yitzy and Rebecca Statman, for dedicating the Shurim this month, commemoration of the first yarzheit of their sister, Menucha Shaindl Yehudis, Bas Dovid Yosef, Menucha Shaindl Yehudis, Zichron Levracha, Bas Dovid Yosef. To thank Shmuel and Robyn Korobkin for dedicating the Shurim this month, in commemoration of the 25th yarzheit of Robyn's mother, Pessa Mira, Bas Chaim, Zichron Levracha. We hope that in the merit of our TALMUD TORAH, the Neshamas will have an aliyah and the family Zainachama. So with that, we have a really incredible daf today. Today's daf is Chaf Beis 22, and we are picking up in Menucha Shaindl. We left off on Chaf Aleph on Beis 21b, and we left off Rabbi Yishmael Rabbi Yossi Omer, which is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 lines up from the bottom. So just to reorient ourselves a little bit. So we're having a very interesting discussion now about the process of annulling a neder. So remember again, just to concentrate on the flow. So the Mishnah spoke about 4 categories of Nedarim that don't require annulment at all. Right? Why? Because halacha l'maisa, they're not Nedarim. They're sunnah. Again, we only spoke about the first of the 4, Nidrei Zerizin. The Gemara then used that as a launch pad to discuss about the general concept of annulling a neder, or revoking a neder. Right? We'll use lashon of annulling a neder. Right? So what we were introduced to yesterday are 2 different schools of thought, or 2 different processes. Number 1 is charata. What's charata? So charata is regret. Now, we saw that even in the world of charata, there are really 2 forms of charata. There's what we'll call present charata and retrospective charata. So present charata means I regret I made the neder. I just regret it. Why do I regret it? It's too onerous. It's too difficult. I wish I never did it. Okay. Then there's what seems to be like a nuanced retrospective charata, which again seems like I wish I would have never made it to begin with. Something happened at the time that I made it, and I wish I never made it then. And then there's what's called Pesach. Pesach, Rabosa, means what? Essentially, there's a piece of information that I'm now cognizant of, that had I been cognizant of it at the time I made the neder, I would have never made the neder. So again, the simple example I gave you yesterday was I made a neder not to drink wine. Comes Shabbos, I'm ready to make Kiddush. I realize, oh my gosh, I can't use wine for Kiddush. Had I been cognizant of the fact at the time that I made the neder that I wouldn't be able to use wine for Kiddush, I would have never made the neder. Okay, so now both sides, what we're really knee deep in over here is whether or not charata actually works. So the Gemara made a statement in the name of one of the Taran that charata doesn't work, and now the Gemara is going out of Rabbi Yehuda in the name of Ravasi that charata doesn't work. And now the Gemara is showing other examples of Rabbanim who said charata did work. For example, the Gemara says, Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yossi, Omer Mishma Aviv, Omer Lo La'adam. We say to a person, Omer Lo La'adam, Ilo Hayu Asara B'nei Adam, Shifaysucha Va'osa Sham Minadarta. Tell me, let's say a guy comes to go ahead and have his neder annulled. So we ask him, at the time you made the neder, if there were 10 people who could have calmed you down, would you have made the neder? Im Amar Love, if he says no, matirin also. Ultimately, again, we go to where matir the neder. So once again, the Ran seems to say that this is charata. Right? So in other words, it's not that there's new information over here, but we say essentially you made the neder in an excited state. Right? Had there been 10 people to calm you down, would you have calmed down and not made the neder? The guy says, yes, that's charata. We can be matir neder based on charata. Hahuda as like Rabbi Asi. So a guy came before Rabbi Asi, Amrle, Kaduta Hisa. So both say, so the guy, again, the part of the story that's not mentioned over here is the guy wanted to have his neder revoked, wanted to have his neder annulled. So Rabbi Asi says, tell me, do you have remorse for having made the neder? Amrle lo. So both say, lo over here means like, how could I not have remorse? So it's a Jewish way of answering the question. I'm saying no. I was saying yes, I do have remorse. So the Gemara says b'shari, and ultimately again Rabbi Asi permitted neder. And again, if you look at the Ran is 2, 4, 6 lines for the bottom. The Shariye kasavar poskin becharata. So we'll say all of these little stories are just examples of Rabbanim who allowed for the annulment of a neder with charata, with simple remorse. So there was a guy who came before Rabbi Elazar, and again he had made a neder, and now he wanted to have the neder annulled. Amalei boyis nadar. Do you want your neder? In other words, do you want your neder to remain in effect? Amalei. So the guy, the vower, responded, "Ilu lo maragzinli lo ba'inon klum." Had those people not gotten me angry, I would have never made the neder to begin with. So what he was saying was, I regret having made the neder. I made the neder in a state of anger. Amrlei tihiki boys. It should be like your wish, namely, the neder is annulled. So both say, so these are all examples. Ultimately, again, look at the Ran. The Ran is 4 lines from the bottom. Kilomar, imlohir gizuni mitrila klum hayisi. Imlohir gizuni mitrila klum hayisi noder lo bevadei ela ayidei kas nadarti ulefichach ani nischaret achshav al shnadarti. So both say, so remember, you begin to see the way charata works. There's no new information that comes to light. As opposed to a Pesach, there's often a new piece of information that comes to light that I was not that it was just discovered, but that I was not aware of before. So now I say to myself, had I known that piece of information at the time when I made the neder, I would have never made the neder. Everyone agrees that works. These are examples of charata. So the guy ultimately says, Terbasi, he's like, says Rabbi Elazar, had I not gotten angry, I would have never made this neder. So there's no new information over here. It's just good old-fashioned remorse. And Rabbi Elazar ultimately again permitted the annulment of the neder based on charata. Another case. Amar the Gemara says, Hahi Isisa, very interesting case. Hahi Isisa, da'adarta lebarta. There was a woman who made a neder prohibiting her daughter from getting any benefits from her property. So that's the case over here. So we'll call that the mother is Rachel. But Rachel got upset at her daughter Leah, and as a result made a neder prohibiting Leah from deriving any benefit from her property. Okay, so now what happens? So now Rachel, the mother, is upset, wants to have the neder annulled. Amrle. So Rabbi Yochanan says to Amrla, Ilu hava yodis the amin megira seich alach debart. So, in other words, let me translate this. So Rabbi Elazar says to her like this: Ilu hava yodis the amin megira seich. Had you known that your neighbors are now talking, and what are your neighbors saying? Megira seich Allah. They're saying about you. Debartach tap of chaf beis amad aleph. The ilu lo cham as ba ima milin da aziva bichdei la adarta miadarta. What was happening now? Now that Rachel made this neder prohibiting her daughter Leah from getting any benefit from her property, Rabbi Elazar says, the neighbors are talking. And what are the neighbors saying? Oh, Leah must have done something really bad. And it must have been probably in the realm of immorality as well, should her mother take such a serious stance against her. So Rabbi Elazar says to the mother Rachel, had you known that the neighbors would say about you that your daughter must have done something so terrible. In other words, now what you've done is you've ruined your daughter's reputation. Miyadart, would you have taken the neder? To which Rachel, the mother, responds, Amar lei lo. So Rachel says, of course not, I would not have done it. And ultimately, again, Rabbi Yochanan permitted the neder. Again, another example of charata. Bar Bartei Rabbi Yanai Saba, Asla Kamed Rabbi Yanai Saba. So literally, again, the son of the daughter of Rabbi Yanai Saba came before Rabbi Yanai Saba. Or in other words, Rabbi Yanai Saba's grandson came before him with a neder. So we'll say, this is incredible. Amrlei. So the grandfather says to the grandson, Rabbi Yanai says to his grandson. So now the grandson wants to be released from his neder. And he says, Amrlei, Ilu hava yodis, de paskin pinkasach, o memashmishin ba'avodecha, mina dart. So listen to this, Rabbi Yanai says to his grandson, tell me, grandson, had you realized that when you make a neder, what happens in Shamayim is they open up your file and they examine all of your deeds. We'll see why that is. That when you make a neder, that's what happens. They open up your file and examine all of your deeds. Would you have made a neder? To which the grandson responds, no, I would not have. Visharye. Ultimately permitted the neder. And I will say, this is also a form of charata, but I will say, if you notice again, this is a little bit different. Because up until now, the charata itself was focused on the actual neder. Here, the charata is focused on the spiritual implications of the neder. Now take a look at the Ran. This is incredible. The Ran says, Tap Ran on Chav Beis Medal 22a, Tepischen Pinkasech Mashu Shem Bavodech, Shemitoch Shu Noder, Nirushu Machzik Atzmo Kichosid Shekashul Enjan. Now also listen to this. We've spoken about this, and we're going to get into this again today in today's daf. Chazal did not like Nedarim. Now, why did Chazal not like Nedarim? Because at the end of the day, you're setting yourself up for a potential significant religious trespass. Right? At the end of the day now, you've made a binding promise, and if you don't keep your word, you're in violation of a biblical prohibition. So, based on this, it's interesting. Rabbi Yanai was saying that there is an element of gaiva associated with a neder. Right? And what's the element of gaiva, the element of arrogance? So if I make a neder, that shows a strong level of confidence that I'm going to go ahead and honor my word. A person is portraying himself as a chassid, as a very pious individual where there's no concern of transgressing my word. Well, if you think you're such a chassid, so what happens in Shamayim? Kadosh Baruch Hu says, well, let's have a look. Let's see really how it is that you're doing in life, and to see if in reality you're such a chassid. Go back to the Ran. If you're confident enough to make a neder, that means that you hold of yourself to be a chassid. So in Shammai, they say, okay, if you think you're a chassid, let's have a look. So Rabbi Yanai says to his grandson, tell me, how do you realize that when you make a neder, you're machzik, you establish yourself as it shows you hold of yourself as a chassid. And when a person holds of himself as a chassid in Shamayim, ultimately they're going to check him out. Say, what an incredible idea. You see, if I'm humble, and I'm fully cognizant of who I am and what I'm not, the Ribbon Shalom is totally good with me. Totally good with me. The moment I portray myself as a tzaddik, as a chassid, really? You think so highly of yourself? No problem. Let's have a look. The power of anava, the power of humility. Both at the end of the day, what does Hashem want of me? He doesn't need me to be a tzaddik. He just needs me to be real. He needs me to be honest. As long as I'm honest with who and what I am, this is great. And trying to be better, fantastic. The danger in life comes about when I'm not honest with who I am. When I think of myself as something greater than I am, then HaKadosh says, whoa, hold up over here. Right? Because the moment you think that you're greater than you actually are is the moment that essentially you prevent any future dynamic personalistic growth. So therefore, again, that when that happens, Kadosh Baruch Hu says, let's hit the brakes over here and really take a look at who you actually are. It's so profound. In any event, Rabbi Yanai goes ahead and is makter the neder based on the charata. I'm Rabbi Abba, Mikra. By the way, what's the pasuk? Where do you know that idea that when you make a neder, HaKadosh Baruch Hu goes ahead and looks into your file? Mikra, the achar nedarim levaker. So I will say, so it's interesting, goes over the pasuk in Mishlei. So the way they translate it is, and after a neder, after a person makes a neder, levaker, there's an investigation. Va'afagav the pasuk Rabbi Yanai lei, and even though Rabbi Yanai used this as a Pesach, anon lo paschinon leibaha. We do not use this as a Pesach for charata. The Ran points out over here, why can't you use this as a Pesach for Charata? Why can't you use this? Look at the Ran, this is incredible. In the short lines, in the narrow lines in the Ran, the second line, no, actually that's the next line. So I'll take this outside for just a moment. Why? Because I will say, essentially the Ran says is, who's going to say no to this? In other words, or who's going to say yes to this? In other words, let's play this out. Right? Rabbi Yanai goes ahead and, Rabbi Yanai's grandson comes to him. And Rabbi Yanai says to his grandson, tell me, how did you realize that when you make a neder, that means you think of yourself as a chassid? And when you think of yourself as a chassid, ultimately, HaKadosh Baruch Hu opens up your file and investigates. Would you have still made the neder? You must say, no one in their right mind is going to say, yeah, sure, I still would have done it, right? Because that looks even worse, right? That looks even worse. What's the problem? I'll say, sometimes you back people into a corner with the question that there's only one way to answer, even if it's not the genuine answer. See, charata, the one thing that charata really needs is what? Genuine remorse. So the problem is, if it's a lopsided question, it's hard to really know if you're getting genuine remorse. So therefore, again, the Gemara says you can't use this mechanism that Rabbi Yanai just used as a form of charata. Similarly, the Gemara says, furthermore, we also don't use the following mechanism for charata. Listen to this. My pasach le Rabbi Gamliel lahu saba. What did Rabbi Gamliel go ahead and use as an opening for charata for another elderly gentleman who had made a neder? Look what it is. Goes over here, the pasuk from Mishlei. Yesh bota kimat karos charev Ulashon chachamim marpe. There's literally there's someone who says something, and what he says is like being stabbed with the sword. But ultimately, again, the words of the chachamim heal. Rabbi say, what is this referring to? What word stab like a sword? Kalabota, whoever articulates a neder, roi ledokro becherev, should be stabbed with a sword. In other words, don't do it. Don't do it. In other words, meaning what I will say again, this is all part of Chazal's idea that taking Nedarim is an unnecessary risk. If you need to get something done in life, do it. You need to take action, do it. Don't attach a neder to it, because a neder ultimately goes there and opens up a whole new dangerous dynamic for you. So playing with Nedarim is like playing with a sharp sword. But again, if you do play with the sword and you do end up stabbing yourself, the words of the Chachamim ultimately again have the ability to heal. So the Gemara says, but you can't. So in other words, the Gemara says, imagine Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Gamliel, an old man came to him with a neder, and Rabbi Gamliel essentially said, had you known that making a neder is like stabbing yourself with a sword, would you have done it? So Rabbi say, so once again, no one's going to say, yes, I would have done it anyway. Of course, everyone's going to answer that question in the negative. No, I wouldn't have done it. But it may not be a genuine charat. In other words, a person may feel obligated to answer a certain way and may not give a genuine answer. Even if you hold charata, remorse works, it has to be a genuine remorse. Furthermore, there's another thing that doesn't work for creating charata, which is disanya. Menucha Shaindl Yehudis says, is incredible. Say, hanoder, if a person makes a nedar, kilu bana bama, wild. I will say a bama is a personal altar, which is biblically prohibited, right? Remember again when the Beis HaMikdash stood, and even after the Beis HaMikdash, you can no longer build a personal altar, right? You want to make a mizbeach, a bama in your backyard, you can't do it. A person who makes a neder is as if he has built a bama. V'hamakaimo. And what's it's even worse than making a neder? What's even worse than making a neder? Fulfilling it. Which we'll explain in just a moment. Fulfilling it is kilu makrav alav carbon. It's as if you went ahead and offered up a carbon on that bama. So what the Gemara essentially is saying is like this, right? Imagine someone comes to the Chacham, and the Chacham says, and tell me, had you realized that making a neder is like going ahead and building a bama, would you have done it anyway? So I was saying, no one's going to answer yes to that, right? In other words, you have to answer no. Problem is, it may not be a genuine charata. So therefore, these mechanisms or these statements are not proper ways to create an opening for charata. By the way, so how do you understand this idea? Take a look at the Ran for just a moment. Hanoder kilu bana bama. It's incredible. Bishas is your bama. So the Ran says, "V'nira be'enai." Supposed to have on the left-hand side, about 8 lines in. Divrei Hamaschil hanoder kilu bana bama. Listen to this Ran. V'nira be'enai dilhachi medamina lebona bama. I will say, why he's making a neder like building a bama? He says, Mishum, the salik adaite, the noder, the mitzvah ka'avid, the rachmana asrei, b'milei di isura, v'yunami asr anafshe. So let's listen to this. What is a neder? A person thinks he's doing a mitzvah. Why does he think he's doing a mitzvah? Chodesh Baruch Hu only prohibited certain things. What does a neder do? A neder prohibits something additional. So we'll say, listen to this. Why doesn't HaKadosh Baruch Hu want us making Nedarim? Essentially, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I've already made enough stuff asr. I don't need you to make anything else asr. If I wanted it asr, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I would have made it asr. And if I didn't make it asr, it's because I want it to remain mutter. So now the problem is, the guy comes along and makes a neder, so he thinks, right, I'm doing a mitzvah, I'm making more things asr. It is not a mitzvah to make more things asr. In fact, it is an avera to make more things asr. The problem is, Rabbi say, when a person is convinced they're doing something right, even when they're doing something wrong, that's the most dangerous situation. It's kind of like building a bama. See, Rabbi say, when a guy builds a bama, what does he think he's doing? Incredible. I'm givam. I'm kadosh v'tar nora v'ayam. Look at me. I'm building my own mizbeach. That's how much I want to go ahead and serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He thinks it's a good thing, meanwhile, it's a terrible transgression. So when you make a neder, and you think you're doing something good by answering something else, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want that. That's ki'ilu bana bama. That's as if a person is actually going ahead and building an altar. Now what about the second part of this? V'amakaimo, skip down. What about, again, I will say, a person goes out and fulfills the neder. So the Gemara says, it's as if you've offered up a carbon. So here, the Ran says, Kilomar, she'eno nisha alav, kilu hikriv al osa. So we'll say, listen to this. This is incredible. You see, if you go ahead and fulfill the neder, it's like you're doubling down on the Isser. So it's bad enough to build a bama. What's even worse than building a bama is actually offering up a carbon. So you both say, if I made the neder, we're going to talk about this. If I made the neder, I both say, so I'm not supposed to make a neder. If I made it, what's the proper course of action? What's the proper course of action? Annulment. See, I both say, this is incredible. The proper course of action, once you have made a neder, is not to say, okay, I made it, I'm going to fulfill it. No. The proper course of action is get out of it. Get out of it. Because every moment you're not out of it is you run the risk of going ahead and transgressing it. So again, making the neder, that's like building the bama. Okay, you thought you were doing something good, just like the guy who built the bama thought he was doing something good. Chash Baruch Hu doesn't want it. He doesn't want anything else to be usher in the world. Everything Hashem wants to be usher, He already made usher. So now you made it, get out of it. If you choose not to get out of it, and instead you go out and you fulfill it, that's like what? Offering a carbon on the bama. You're compounding relation. So you're both saying, this is an incredible insight into human thought. And maybe we can, they will say, very often, we realize we're doing something wrong in life. No one ever likes to be confronted with the fact they're doing something wrong. So it's incredible. 9 out of 10 times, you know what people do when they're confronted with the fact they're doing something wrong? You know what they do? They double down. It's fascinating. We all do this. We double down. I know this is not right. No, I'm going to show you how it's right. You know it's not right. No, I'm going to show you. Right? There's a this, there's a that, there's a Rashi and the Tosafta and the Ksubis and this, that I once heard on a sheer 2.5 speed, and I heard it's this, that. It's okay, I heard. We double down. It's an incredible thing. We just double down. Instead of saying, I made a mistake, and maybe it's a significant mistake, let me go ahead and redirect. We double down. I make a neder, that's like you're building a bama. And then it says, okay, I made a mistake, let me get out of it. No. I'm going to fulfill it. That's ki'ilu makriv carbon. Then it's like, again, I'm doubling down on it. It's incredible. So we'll say, the point over here is, the Gemara says, this is not a proper opening for charata. In other words, in order just to play this out, let's say I go to the Chacham, and I say, I made a neder, and I would like to get out of it. So the Chacham says, well, how do you realize that making a neder is like building a bama, and fulfilling the neder is like offering a carbon, you have made it? So we'll say, again, that's a lopsided charata, because no one is going to answer no to that, right? No one is going to answer yes to that. I would have made it anyway. So again, charata has to be genuine. Anything which creates almost like a lopsided charata is not going to work. Incredible. So the Gemara says as follows: Bereisha paschinon beseifa. So with the earlier form of this, you can create a pasach for charata. Beseifa. What about with this latter case? Abaye or paschinon, Rav lo paschinon. Abaye says it works. We'll create a pasach of charata, and ultimately again, Rava says it does not. Rav Kahana masli lahashmaita b'hadein lishna. Rav Kahana had an alternate version of this. Rav Kahana had this previous version. Rav Tavyumi masni haki. Rav Tavyumi had a different version. Beseifa lo paschinon. With this last form of charata, it does not work. Bereisha, with the earlier form, Abaye amar paschinon, Rava amar lo paschinon. Rava say hilchasa. So what's the halacha? Lo paschinon, lo bereisha, velo beseifa. So Rava say what we are going to see is as follows: charata is a valid form of neder annulment. Charata does work. What doesn't work? These forms of charata that we just learned about. I guess what we'll call it spiritual guilt. Charata doesn't work. Which, by the way, is actually a profound idea in Judaism in general about how to affect change within people. Usually, guilt is not a very positive vehicle of cathartic change. So the Gemara is saying over here, these forms of spiritual guilt, right? How'd you realize that when you made a neder, they're going to open up your file and show would you have made a neder? That doesn't work for charata. How'd you realize that when you made a neder, right? It's like building a bama. Would you have made it? So the spiritual guilt model doesn't work. Genuine charata, which says, you know what, I regret having made it. I wish I would have never made it. Again, just because I don't want to be under a neder, that works. Spiritual guilt doesn't work. Incredible. So the Gemara goes weiter. Furthermore, v'lo paschina bahan nami de Shmuel. So we'll say, furthermore, again, we also can't use the following for charata. What does Shmuel say? Demar Shmuel, af apisha makaimo nikra rasha. I will say, so Shmuel said like this. Shmuel said, another form of charata, as we tell the guy, how do you realize that you made the neder? Even if you fulfilled, you're called a rasha. would you still make it? Right? So we'll say, this is also not a form. This is another piece of spiritual guilt charata, which is not going to work. So we'll say, again, I just want to point out, Chazal understood that spiritual guilt, especially when one person puts it on another, very rarely works to affect change. I'm Rabbi Abo, Mikra, Rabbi said, brother, what is the pasuk that tells me that if I make a neder, I'm a rasha? Where does that come from? So the Gemara says, lindal lo yeh b'cha. So we'll say, the pasuk says, if you refrain from making a neder, there will not be a chet upon you, not be a sin upon you. Lashon of sechtal ultimately is refraining. V'yolif chadala, making zir shava chadala, ksiv hacha ki sechta lindar, or ksiv hasam shem rishaim chadalu roges. Of course, the pasuk over here from Eov shem rishaim chadalu, roges. Fine. So we'll say zir shava chadala. Amrav Yosef. Afana nami tanina. We also learn this. Kinidre ksherim lo amar klum. Kinidre rishaim nadar benazir bekarban u'shavah. We had this in the earlier Mishnah. If a person says kinidre ksherim, such a statement is meaningless. If he says kinidre rishaim, ultimately again such a statement is meaningful. What do you see from here? That Allah said ksherim don't make nedarim, rishaim do make nedarim. Incredible. Amar Rabbi Nachmani, Amar Rabbi Yonasan. So we'll say, so now we're transitioning a little bit away from nedarim to getting into some other incredible hashkafic topics here. Whoever gets angry, kolmine gehenim sholtenbo. Wow. So we'll say, so on a most basic level, what the Gemara seems to be saying is that Allah, when a person gets angry, the punishment for anger is all types, he is subject to all types of Gehenim. All types of Gehenim. Therefore, say, if you look at the Ran, the way the Ran understands this is at the end of the short lines, about 6 lines up before the end of the short lines in the Ran. Kol Adam HaKois Kol Mine Gehenim Sholten Bo, Levi Shakas Mevio Lichbar Ba'ikar Kedarmina Barak Rebbe Lazar, Doreg, Demishaber, Caleb Bechamaso, Yebenechav. So we'll say, according to the Ran, the idea is anger leads one to deny the existence of Hashem. So that's, according to the Ran, that's the meaning, that anger creates an entranceway to Gehenna. All types of Gehenna take hold of a person, because when a person, I will say, we know this, when a person loses themselves in the midah of anger, so a person could lose sight of everything, including HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Therefore, halacha l'maisa again, kol mini Gehenna shalom. I will say, by the way, I always thought that there's a much simpler pshat in this Gemara. Gehenna doesn't have to refer to where you go after 120. Some people experience Gehenna in this world also, just like some people experience Olam Haba in this world also, right? Shabbos is me'in Olam Haba. So what does it mean? I will say, this Gemara doesn't even need so much perish. Kol HaKois. I will say, we know that there are people who are consumed by anger. How do you feel in life when you are consumed by anger? Life is Gehenna. Life itself. I would say we all know this. We've all had periods where we're angry at someone or angry at something, and even if I'm not actively lashing out, but I'm just walking around with like this pit of anger inside of me, life is terrible. Everything is terrible. The world is terrible. Even I'm just consumed with anger about one person, one thing, one situation. Life becomes Gehenna. It's almost like not a punitive statement, but a de facto statement. If you allow yourself to be consumed by anger, life as a whole becomes Gehenna. So the Gemara goes weiter. Shneimar ba'aser kasmin lebecha, ba'avera mibsarecha, ve'in ra ela Gehenna. Shneimar kapal Hashem l'ma'aneh v'gam rosh liyom ra. V'lo od. So I'll say, so again, I'll just point out over here that it's interesting. How does Shlomo HaMelech say to go ahead and deal with anger? This is incredible. What's the piece of Solomonic wisdom for dealing with anger? Haser hakas milibecha. Right, what Shlomo else? How do you deal with anger? Stop getting angry. Right? Stop getting angry. Just remove it. I will say, the Rambam also codifies this in Hilchos Deos, and it's such an incredible yesod that sometimes the way to stop feeling a certain way is to stop feeling a certain way. Right? That's it. We're always looking for strategies and therapies, and those are important at different times. But sometimes a person just has to flip a switch, and a person has to say, I choose to no longer feel this way. I choose to no longer be angry. I choose to no longer harbor animosity. And I will say, no one likes to hear that, right? No one likes. Why don't we like to hear it? Why not? Because if I realize that how I feel is a choice, that means that when I choose to remain angry, that is a choice I make. You see, we like to look at our anger, especially the kind that we harbor. It's not a choice. It's not a choice. This is a result of life's circumstances, and I have no choice but to be angry at you. I have no choice. It's not true. You have a choice. You have it. Shlomo says, if anger wasn't the choice, then Shlomo couldn't say, remove it from your heart. If he tells me to remove it from my heart, that means maybe getting angry may not be a choice. Because sometimes that's just like reflexive. That's just a result of certain stimuli. Remaining angry is a choice. Getting angry, maybe not. Remaining is absolutely a choice. So both say it's an incredible mussar. Because all of us, many of us are angry at someone, something, and maybe it's been that way for a very long time. Just understand, if you choose to remain in that state, that's a choice. That's a choice. You may want to make that choice for some strange reason and live in Gehenna. Or a person could choose to flip the switch, get out of the anger, get out of Gehenna. It's a choice we make. The Gemara goes weiter. The Gemara says, Elo, listen to this. There's another reason why anger is so terrible, which is interesting. Ella, shatachtonio sholet is apparently, consistent anger causes hemorrhoids. I haven't seen the studies on this, right? But again, why even try it? Why even try it? Shene Emar, listen to this. I'll say it's pretty incredible. But I'll tell you what it means. I think what it means hashkafically. There's hashkafa even in hemorrhoids. V'nasan Hashem l'cha leiv roges v'kil yon einayim v'dabo nefesh. What is something that diminishes the eyesight and literally causes consistent pain? That's hemorrhoids. I will say, by the way, I think just even on a hashkafic level, what does it mean that anger causes hemorrhoids? I will say, what happens when a person has hemorrhoids, right? You can't find comfort, right? You can't sit. Right? I will say, what does anger do? We've all had it. When you're angry, like I can't feel settled. Right? I can't sit. I can't stand. I can't sleep. I can't this. I'm always upset. There's no comfort. I can't find a sense of life serenity. Perhaps that's what it means when it says, because we'll say, I don't know, what other ailment could Chazal give that totally diminishes from a person's sense of life serenity? Hemorrhoids is a pretty good one, right? I can't sit, I can't stand, I can't walk, I can't run, I can't go here, I can't do this. Everything in life is tainted by this physical reality. That's anger. I will say, and isn't it incredible that it's a choice? It's a choice. I can make a choice today to identify the things that I'm still angry about, that I've been angry about for years, and make a choice to let it go. I will say, letting go of your anger doesn't mean that the person who did something bad to you is forgiven. And it doesn't mean that you're whitewashing the transgressions of the past. It just means I'm choosing not to hold on to this stuff, because it's making my life a Gehenna. And I don't want to live in Gehenna. Let's go back to both say crazy story. You see, I wanted to put more adjectives in the WhatsApp chat about today's daf, but I know that I've lost a little bit of credibility with this. So I just said beautiful, but I will say, this is wild stuff. Listen to this. 5 lines up from the bottom. Ula b'miskil ardi Yisrael islav ulei trei b'nei chozai b'hadei. Ula was traveling from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael. As he was traveling, two guys from Beit Chozai, two Jews accompanied him on the journey. I will say the two guys got into a fight. One guy got up and killed the other guy. Amar le Ula, the murderer, said to Ula, Yeyos avdi Ula, I did the right thing, right? Right? So Ula's talking with the murderer, right? So the murderer says to Ula, by the way, isn't it profound? At the end of the day, everyone wants to do the right thing, right? And the truth is, I want affirmation in the fact that I'm living life in the right way. So the murderer turns to Ula, right? Shkoyach, right? You give me a shkoyach for that? He had it coming. He absolutely had it coming. I did the right thing, no? So Amrle in. Ula said, oh yeah, sure, absolutely, you did the right thing. Uparle lebeis hashchita. But you know what you should do? Apparently, Ruvain had slit Shimon's throat. Shimon is sitting there gurgling to death. Ula says, at least what you should do is go ahead and literally reveal the incision, reveal the cut. In other words, let him die a faster death. The guy is bleeding out here slowly. Literally, again, parle beis hashchita means literally uncover his neck and let him die quickly. Okay. So Ula makes a safety to Eretz Yisrael. Ula comes to Rabbi Yochanan. Amar lei, dilma chas v'shel machziki de over avera. Ula felt incredibly guilty, right? Because obviously the guy asked him for a shkayach. He gave the guy a shkayach. Ula felt that he was doing the right thing by putting the victim out of his misery. But Ula said, maybe the fact that I gave him a shkayach and even gave him an eitzah, in other words, this guy walked away thinking that I, Ula, agreed with his actions. So perhaps I've done something terrible. Ultimately, I'm going to be machzik yidei ovrei avera, literally strengthening or bolstering sinful behavior. Rabbi Yochanan says, Amarlei, nafshecha itzalta. Rabbi Yochanan said, chas shalom, Ula, you were in a life-threatening situation. Because if Reuven killed Shimon, he could have just as easily what? Turned around and killed you had you voiced your unhappiness with his actions. So you absolutely did the right thing by giving him a shkoyach in order to save your own life. Rabbi said, after Ula left, Katam Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan was very bothered by this episode. Why was he bothered by it? Rabbi says incredible. Michti ksiv v'nasan Hashem lecha leiv rogez. B'bavel ksiv. So Rabbi said, listen to this. The pasuk says, now, what was Rabbi Yochanan bothered by? He's like, that one Jew kills another, that only happens in Chutz La'aretz. That doesn't happen in Eretz Yisrael. So Rabbi Yochanan was very bothered by, how could an episode like this have happened in Eretz Yisrael? How could Rabbi say, by the way, I just want to point out, it's so fascinating. One of the most incredible things about Eretz Yisrael, right? Anyone who's ever driven in Eretz Yisrael knows that I will say, right? It's like Lord of the Flies, right? It's literally like, getting into a lake. Like it's fine in America, right? You want to switch lanes, so what do? You roll down your window, you go ahead, and you put out your hand. 7 out of 10 times, right? The person is going to let you in, right? In Eretz Yisrael, don't put out your hand because it may get clipped. In other words, don't do that. It's an incredible thing. Yet. I was saying, one of the most beautiful things, and I see it every single time I go, and again, you would never see that. I don't think you'd ever see this in America. Children walking on their own, right, need to cross the street. The child will go over to an adult, another Jew, a stranger, and ask them to help him cross the street. You would never do that in America, right? You would never allow your child to do that in America. I think even if you live in a very firm community like ours, I don't think you still would do it in America. It's an incredible thing. There's a level of achdus. There's a level of unity. There's a level of love. There's a level of national cohesion that exists within Eretz Yisrael. So Rabbi Yochanan is, how could one Jew kill another Jew? So the Gemara says, so Amrlei, so Rabbi Yochanan asks to Ula. Ula says, Amrlei, Hahu Shaita Amadeis Lo Avrinan Yardena. No. This didn't happen in Eretz Yisrael. This happened on the other side of the Jordan. Now the truth is, the other side of the Jordan is also still technically Eretz Yisrael, but it doesn't have all of the dinim of Eretz Yisrael. So this is incredible. So Ula says to Rabbi Yochanan, no, don't worry. Worry, this is terrible, but it didn't happen in Eretz Yisrael, it happened on the other side of the Jordan. Incredible. By the way, I'll just point out that more to talk about this, but we'll get to the daf. I will say, Kalakois, whoever gets angry, we're still talking about anger. Kalakois, afilu shchina eina chashuva kenegdo. It was incredible. We know this, right? When a person gets angry, he doesn't even care about Hashem. Right? Even the shchina is not important for him. I will say, again, this is the danger of anger. That anger itself could become such an all-consuming midah that a person even forgets about the shchina. Shnei Amar, so it quotes over here the pasuk, Rasha kegova apol bal yidrosh ein elokim kol mizimosav. That again, literally again, when the Rasha gets angry, ein elokim, even if the Baruch was not there. Rabbi Yomi Medifti Amar mashkach talmudo mosif tipshus. Incredible. When a person gets angry, he forgets his learning. So I will say, forgetting your learning is bad enough, but I forget my learning and I intensify my foolishness. So now that's a double danger. Forgetting my learning puts me in spiritual peril of making mistakes, and then amplification of my foolishness puts me again even greater jeopardy of making mistakes. Shnei Amar ki kas b'chei ksilim yanuach uksiv uksil yipo shavalas. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar biyadua sha'avonosa meruv mischuyosa. Rabbi said this is incredible. When a person gets angry, know that this is such a person whose averus are more than his mitzvos. Shene'emar, ubal chema rav pesha. Literally, again, someone who gets angry has a majority of sins. And I will say, that also can be understood in a very simple way. The idea that when a person gets angry, in that moment, that's the same we spoke about yesterday's daf, that when I do a mitzvah, in that moment, I am a tzaddik, like the Balatanya said. So too, again, in the moment that a person gets angry, in that moment, it is clear that my averos outnumber my mitzvos. Because of what anger does to me. It causes me to forget my learning. It intensifies foolishness. In that moment of anger, it is clear that my averos outnumber my mitzvos. Incredible. Amar Rav Ada Rabbi Chanina. El Molei Lo Chati Yisrael is very interesting. Had Klal Yisrael not sinned, this is talking about in the Midbar, Lo Nita Lahem Ela Chamishe Chumshei Torah, the Sefer Yoshua Bilvad, Sha'arka Shel Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi said, this is incredible. This is so fascinating. Had Klal Yisrael not sinned in the Midbar, Rabbi said the entirety of Torah would have been 5 Chumashim, Chamishe Chumshei Torah, and Sefer Yoshua. Why didn't he Sefer Yoshua? Because Sefer Yoshua delineates the boundaries of Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi say, what does the rest of Nach do? Pretty much the rest of Nach, Rabbi say, is Musar to Klal Yisrael. Musar to Klal Yisrael, because we angered HaKadosh. Isn't that wild to think about? Had we not sinned and needed the rebuke of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Nedarim, ultimately, again, all we would have had, Chamishe Chumshei Torah Sefer Yoshua. Now that we angered HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we did so many things wrong, we need the rest of the Nevi'im to give us Musar. Incredible. So the Gemara says, my taima, ki barov chachma, rov kas. Ultimately, again, literally, again, the more wisdom, the more anger. And I will say, now this happens to be talking about over here. The way the Gemara is using this pasuk is that because of the rov kas, because we angered HaKadosh Baruch Hu so many times, therefore what? We require more chachma. We require more insight of the Nevi'im. The way Shlomo HaMelech actually means that pasuk in Koheles is actually something very different. Shlomo HaMelech means it to say that sometimes the smarter you are, the more kas there is in your life. In other words, that sometimes Shlomo HaMelech is advocating for sometimes a more simple approach to living. We think that knowledge is power, and it's true, but sometimes too much knowledge actually becomes frustrating. In other words, what Shlomo HaMelech is advocating is for an emunah pshuta, a simple belief, a simple faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's where real happiness is. The more complicated, analytical approaches to life sometimes do not only not yield happiness, but sometimes detract from happiness. Okay, but a different topic. Let's go later. Says the Gemara. Amar Rav Asi. Go say back to Nedarim. Okay, we took a little commercial break with Kas. Now back to Nedarim. Amar Rav Asi. Ein niskakin le'elokei Yisrael. So we'll say, listen to this. Now we're transitioning for just a moment. So we spoke extensively about the fact that we will annul a neder with a Pesach, and now based on what we've established, we'll also annul a neder with charata, with remorse. The only type of charata which won't work is spiritual guilt. Spiritual guilt, charata, is not going to work. Now both sides, there is a machlokes later on, which we're going to discuss, about whether or not one could annul a shvuah. Does it work to annul a shvuah or not? So that's what we're going to discuss. The Gemara says the follows. Rav Asi says, Ein niskaken le'elokei Yisrael. Now both sides, the truth is now, what this is really talking about over here is annulling an oath. So we're not going to really get into the mechanics of it right now, but here's the point the Gemara is making. If a person, let's assume we paskin, ultimately again, like Beis Hillel, who holds that you can annul an oath. Let's assume that for just a moment. If a person swears by the God of Israel, we do not annul such an oath like that. In other words, if you're invoking the name of Hashem in making your shvuah, we're not touching that. The Gemara says, "Chutz mikonim ishti nanis li shegan ba'as kisi b'shehik says b'ni v'nod v'shlogan b'shloikasa." With one exception, ultimately, again, if a man made a shvuah against his wife because he thought that she stole money, or he thought that she hit their child, when in fact she really didn't do that, then such an oath like that will annul. But in general, I will say, if a person made an oath, or a neder for that matter, and invoked the name of God, that we're not touching. Now, you kind of went over a line of severity that we're just not willing to get into the annulment of that. You're stuck with that neder shvuah. There was a guy who came before Rav Asi, and Rav Asi said, "B'may nadart? With what did you make a neder?" And Rav Asi said, "The answer is the pashtus. This isn't really a neder; it's really a shvuah, but it's fine." So the guy said, "Belokei Yisrael, I swore by the God of Israel, Had you made a neder or a shuvah b'mohi, let's remember again, what's mohi for? Mohi is a kinoi for who? Moshe Rabbeinu. So ultimately again, Ravasi said, had you made a neder or a shuvah by mohi, I would have been willing to help you. Now that you literally made a neder or a shvuah by God, I'm sorry, I can't help you with that. Rav Kahana ikal Rabbi Yosef. Rav Kahana went to ask Rabbi Yosef. Amarlei, listen to this. Litom marmidi. So Rabbi saying. So Rabbi Yosef says to Rav Kahana, come inside and eat something. Amarlei lo. So Rabbi says listen to this. Rav Kahana said, no, mari kula lo ta'im nolei. By the master of all, I will not eat anything of yours. Wow. Right? So in other words, pretty strong wording. Essentially took a neder by the master of all. I'm not going to eat anything of yours. Amarle. So we'll say, listen to this. Rav Yosef responded, Lo mare kule lo ta'imalei. By the master of everything, I will not give you anything to eat. Okay? So Rav Kahana da'amarle mare kula. So I understand why Rav Kahana made a neder. He didn't want to eat. He didn't want to eat at the house of Rav Kahana. I'm sorry, he didn't want to eat at the house of Rav Yosef. So I understand Rav Kahana's neder. Ela Rav Yosef, Amai Amar Lo Marikula. But according to Rav Yosef, why did Rav Yosef make a corresponding neder or shvuah that ultimately Rav Kahana can't eat by him? So he says, no. Hachi hu deka amrlei. Lo marikula hu deka amrit. Hilchach lo ta'imaslei. Now also what Rav Yosef was saying back to Rav Kahana, look, if that's the neder you made a neder, you made a shvuah ultimately invoking the name of God, then you're right. I can't feed you any food. In other words, Rav Yosef, he wasn't making, so ultimately, again, in this case, Rav Yosef wasn't making a corresponding neder. Instead, what Rav Yosef was saying was back to Rav Kahana, whoa, like if that's where you're going with all of this, that ultimately, again, you're swearing you're making a neder by the master of all, then Einachinami, you're right, you cannot come to eat in my house. So we'll stop over here for today. Incredible shah. I will say, I'm leaving off. Actually, you know what? The truth is, let me just read one more line. Amar Rav Nachman, Hilchasa. Posting the karata, then it's in another case. I will say, we'll see this inside tomorrow. Halacha l'maisa, the way we pass in Abba says that we said before, we allow a neder to be annulled or revoked based on charata, and even if one made a neder or a shvuah with invoking the name of God, we will still get involved to annul that as well. In Meretz, I will say, we'll see that play out in tomorrow's daf. Shkoyach. All right, Chevron Zoom, good to see everyone. Richard, Reb Jerry, Reb David, Aris Yisrael, contingent Dovid Yosef, everyone. Have a great day.